If you opened your wardrobe tonight and looked closely, you might be surprised to discover how many pieces quietly whisper stories from centuries ago. A folded hood inspired by an old traveling cloak, a belt worn for style rather than necessity, layers that feel comforting on cold days, structured garments that echo tailoring born long before electricity or machines. We often think of medieval clothing as distant, unfamiliar, locked in dusty paintings or museum glass. But the truth is softer, simpler, and far more intertwined with modern life than we realize. Tonight on Boring History for Sleep, we're going to drift gently into the world of medieval habits. Not the grand costumes of kings and queens, but the everyday choices ordinary people made when getting dressed. Choices made for warmth, practicality, comfort, durability. And somehow, after hundreds of years, many of those choices still rest quietly in our closets, reflected in the clothes we wear without a second thought. Before we follow these threads through time, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment about your favorite modern clothing item. You may discover tonight that its roots stretch much farther back than you imagined. Your support keeps these peaceful journeys going. Now, get comfortable, breathe softly, and let the fabric of history unfold. When we talk about clothing in the medieval world, it's easy to imagine something distant. Heavy cloaks, rough fabrics, wool tunics, and long garments that seem far removed from the light jackets and comfortable sweaters we wear today. But one of the strongest threads connecting medieval clothing habits to modern fashion is something so ordinary, so instinctive, that we barely even notice how old the tradition truly is: the habit of layering. Layer upon layer, fabric upon fabric, warmth upon warmth. A quiet, practical art that shaped medieval life and somehow followed us all the way into our wardrobes today. If you could step gently into a medieval morning, long before the sun finished warming the rooftops, you would see how layering governed the simple act of getting dressed. Medieval people didn't choose layers because they wanted to look stylish or because it was fashionable. They did it because it made sense, because it was how you stayed warm inside stone houses that breathed cold air, how you kept comfortable during unpredictable weather, how you managed garments that were often heavy, slow to wash, and made to last. Layering wasn't a trend. It was a lifestyle, a quiet habit woven into daily routines, shaping how people moved, worked, rested, and even slept in colder months. And what's remarkable is that this habit never disappeared. Even in a world filled with modern fabrics, heating systems, and lightweight materials, we still instinctively reach for layers. A shirt under a sweater, a jacket over a hoodie, a scarf wrapped around the neck, a coat pulled tightly over everything else. We don't think of it as medieval, but the roots are deep, quietly inherited from people who learned long ago that comfort begins with layers. In medieval Europe, the base layer was almost always a simple, soft garment worn close to the skin, something that could be washed more easily than outer layers, something that protected the body from rougher fabrics. It might have been a linen shirt or a long undertunic. These garments were light, breathable, and surprisingly comfortable. They absorbed sweat, protected outer clothing from wear, and made the layers above them feel smoother. These base layers were used daily, washed regularly, and worn so consistently that they became a second skin. And when you think about how modern people rely on t-shirts, undershirts, leggings, or base thermals, the connection becomes clear. We still trust the simplest layer to do the quietest, most important work. Over this base layer came the middle garments, thicker tunics, wool dresses, sleeved robes, or fitted jackets depending on the region and the period. These layers were the workhorses of medieval clothing. They held warmth, added structure, and were durable enough for daily tasks. Wool, especially, played a key role. Medieval wool was not always soft, but it was warm, sturdy, and versatile. When woven tightly, it resisted wind. When layered, it trapped heat. And even now, when people wear wool sweaters, coats, or suits, they're embracing the same principle: reliable warmth through natural fabric layered thoughtfully. The final layer in medieval clothing was often the cloak or outer garment. Cloaks were not simply dramatic pieces seen in old stories. They were everyday necessities. They protected against rain, wind, snow, and chilly mornings. They could be pulled close around the shoulders, pinned at the chest, or thrown back when movement was needed. They were, in many ways, the medieval equivalent of today's jackets and coats. Long, flowing outerwear that offered protection, comfort, and a sense of security. When people today reach for trench coats, wool coats, oversized jackets, or even ponchos and capes, they're echoing a garment worn for more than 1,000 years. What made layering so essential in medieval Europe was the way it adapted to life. Layers could be added or removed as the day changed. If someone stepped outdoors, they tightened their cloak. If they moved into a warm kitchen where bread baked in the oven, they removed a layer to stay comfortable. If they traveled, they carried spare layers rolled neatly. If they worked in fields or workshops, they loosened garments to allow more movement. Layers weren't fixed outfits, they were flexible solutions. This flexibility is something modern fashion still embraces. Today, layering is not just practical, it has become a universal style element. People layer for weather, for comfort, for texture, for personal expression. They balance fabrics, cotton under wool, knit under denim, fleece under waterproof shells. They mix lengths, shapes, and volumes. They play with silhouettes. Yet beneath all of this creativity lies the same simple medieval truth. Life is easier when your clothing adapts with you. In medieval times, layering also helped preserve garments. Washing clothes was laborious, and heavy garments couldn't be cleaned often. By wearing washable base layers underneath, people kept outer clothing from absorbing sweat or oil. This made clothing last longer, an important habit in a world where textiles were expensive and time-consuming to produce. Modern people may not think of it consciously, but we still protect expensive outer layers with easily washable undergarments. Even something as simple as wearing a t-shirt under a sweater echoes that old logic. Another reason layering endured through the centuries is emotional comfort. Medieval people lived in a world where weather changed quickly and insulation was limited. Wearing layers brought a sense of security, the ability to wrap oneself in warmth, to shield the body, to feel cocooned against the cold. It was a softness in a world of stone walls and drafty halls. And even now, a soft sweater or cozy scarf provides the same quiet reassurance. We often reach for layers not because we are cold, but because they feel comforting. This subtle emotional connection is one of the oldest surviving clothing habits, passed through generations without needing explanation. The way medieval people layered clothing also influenced how modern fashion views proportions. Longer garments under shorter ones, cloaks draped over fitted tunics, loose sleeves layered over tighter ones. These visual arrangements shaped silhouettes that eventually influenced coats, cardigans, jackets, and even dresses. Today's fashion, oversized outerwear, long coats over slim trousers, layered skirts, tunics over leggings, still carries these echoes. Medieval layering was practical, yes, but it unintentionally planted aesthetic seeds that blossomed centuries later. The textures of layering also played a role in its longevity. Medieval people understood that different fabrics served different purposes. Linen for coolness, wool for warmth, leather for durability, fur for insulation. Combining fabrics created harmony, a concept still central to modern fashion. We layer cotton with fleece, denim with knitwear, silk with wool, leather with soft inner linings. The idea that each material contributes something unique has been with humanity for more than a millennium. Another fascinating medieval habit was the layering of accessories. Belts, for example, were often worn over multiple layers to keep clothing in place and to provide structure. Today, belts worn over coats, dresses, or oversized sweaters echo this same instinct. Scarves were layered not just for warmth, but also as decorative elements, and modern scarves maintain that dual purpose. Even the habit of wearing a hooded layer under a thicker outer garment has survived. Hoodies under jackets are now staples of modern streetwear, but originally, the hood was a medieval layering invention. One of the most subtle yet enduring aspects of medieval layering was that garments were meant to last. People didn't own dozens of pieces, so layering allowed them to create variety without having many clothes. A single undertunic paired with different outer garments created the appearance of new outfits. Today, capsule wardrobes and minimalist fashion echo this medieval practicality. By layering creatively, people can express different styles with fewer items, a habit born from necessity centuries ago. Perhaps the most beautiful part of medieval layering, though, was how natural it felt. No one thought of it as strategy or fashion. It was simply how you dressed to live comfortably in a world shaped by weather, material limitations, and daily routines. And that's why it endured. Habits don't survive for 1,000 years because they are trendy. They survive because they work. They become part of how humans understand comfort, care, and adaptation. When you stand in front of your closet today, deciding whether to wear a sweater over a shirt or a jacket over a hoodie, you're participating in a habit shared by countless people who lived long before you. When you reach for a scarf on a windy morning or layer a long sleeve under a coat, you're echoing decisions made in medieval kitchens, workshops, and marketplaces. The clothing changed, the materials changed, the world changed, but the instinct remained. Layering is one of the oldest clothing habits we still follow because it reflects something deeply human: the desire to stay warm, stay comfortable, and stay adaptable. It is a quiet reminder that medieval life was not as distant as it seems. In every folded sweater, every layered outfit, every warm combination of fabrics, we are still connected to them. In the next chapter, we drift into another medieval habit still alive in modern fashion: the tradition of belts and cinched silhouettes, and how shaping the waist became a timeless element that followed us all the way into today's styles. If there is one medieval clothing habit that slipped into modern fashion so smoothly we hardly notice its ancient roots, it is the use of belts. Not only to hold garments in place, but to shape the body, define the waist, carry essentials, and create structure in an outfit. Today, belts are everywhere, threaded through the loops of trousers, wrapped around coats, tightened over dresses, or worn purely as decorative elements. Fashion magazines show them as styling tools. Streetwear embraces them as statements. Outerwear relies on them for shaping and symmetry. But long before belts were fashion accessories, they were medieval necessities, quiet, practical solutions to everyday life that somehow endured through the centuries. To understand how belts became such a timeless habit, imagine a medieval morning as someone prepares for the day. The base layer is soft and loose, the middle layer adds warmth, and the outer garment drapes generously. None of these garments are fitted the way modern clothes are. They hang, flow, and shift with movement. So, the belt steps in, a simple band, sometimes leather, sometimes woven, sometimes made from sturdy cloth. It gathers the layers together, draws the waist inward, secures tools, supports pouches, and gives the wearer a sense of readiness. In a world before pockets were common, the belt was essential. It carried knives, keys, small bags, tools, and anything else a person needed at hand. But beyond practicality, the belt also shaped the silhouette. By cinching the waist, it turned loose garments into something more structured. It created a visual line, a subtle definition that made the outfit look deliberate. Men wore belts over tunics. Women tied belts over long gowns. Children wore miniature belts that helped clothes stay in place. The cinched waist wasn't a fashion statement. It was simply how clothing worked best. Over time, this functional silhouette quietly became a preference. People grew accustomed to the feeling of a garment hugging the waist, to the sense of stability it created. It was comforting, grounding, and familiar. And even though centuries passed and styles changed dramatically, the instinct to define the waist never disappeared. Modern fashion still reflects this medieval habit in countless ways. A coat tied at the middle echoes the medieval cloak held close by a belt. A dress gathered at the waist mirrors medieval gowns shaped by cords or woven bands. Even the simple act of tightening a belt to make an outfit feel complete is a thread stretching back to people who lived in wooden houses, walked dirt roads, and relied on belts not for style, but for survival. The persistence of belts in clothing history is not just about appearance. It is also about utility. Medieval people carried everything they might need for the day on their belts. Since pockets were rare, the belt became a mobile storage system. Travelers hung small pouches from them. Market vendors tied tools and small scales. Workers carried knives, needle kits, and keys. Even children sometimes wore tiny pouches filled with treasures or practical items. This habit of carrying essential objects close to the body still exists today, though in different forms. Modern belts sometimes hold pouches, phone holsters, or small bags. Utility belts remain central in certain professions. Even the concept of the modern handbag, hung from the shoulder or held close to the body, has echoes of the medieval belt pouch, a small, reliable container always within reach. Another reason belts survived from medieval life into modern fashion is the emotional comfort of structured clothing. When a garment is tied or gathered at the waist, it feels secure. It stays in place. It moves with the body, not against it. Medieval people understood this intuitively. They didn't need tight tailoring to feel put together. They needed a cinched middle that offered stability. Today, people still tighten a belt not only for fit, but for confidence. An outfit feels more intentional, more balanced, more complete when the waist is defined. This emotional sensation, subtle yet powerful, is one of the oldest clothing instincts still alive. Medieval belts also influenced how clothing was layered. By drawing one or more layers together at the waist, belts created pleasing drapes, folds, and textures. The way a cloak fell over a belted tunic created depth. The way a gown gathered at the waist created gentle waves of fabric. These silhouettes later inspired tailoring traditions that shaped early modern clothing, and from there, centuries of fashion evolved. Even now, long coats with belts, dresses with waist ties, and tops with wraparound designs reflect that ancient layering habit. Belts became so integral to medieval clothing that even decorations were added to them. Some belts were simple and plain, others had small metal pieces or patterned weaving. The belt became the one accessible area where people could express individuality, especially when most clothing followed practical shapes and muted tones. Modern fashion echoes this with decorative buckles, textured belts, embellished straps, and stylized waist ties. The idea that a belt can be both useful and expressive is a medieval concept carried seamlessly into today's wardrobes. Another subtle connection between medieval belts and modern fashion is the symbolic sense of readiness. Medieval people often tightened their belts before work, travel, or important activities. It was a small gesture that signaled focus, preparation, and steadiness. Over time, this gesture entered language in many cultures. Phrases about tightening one's belt still evoke a sense of discipline or resilience. Even now, people adjust their belts almost unconsciously before starting the day, as if preparing themselves mentally as much as physically. The belt also shaped medieval identity. Tradespeople often carried tools on their belts, signaling their work. Messengers wore small pouches that held documents. Shepherds carried personal items that showed their daily tasks. Travelers hung small flasks or cords. The belt quietly communicated a person's role in society. Modern fashion does this in subtle ways too. Tool belts define certain professions. Fashion belts indicate personal style. Even the placement of accessories can suggest personality, practicality, or creativity. Echoes of the medieval world layered into contemporary life. Women in medieval Europe also relied heavily on belts. Though styles varied across regions and centuries, the practice of tying the waist remained consistent. A long gown could be transformed simply by pulling a belt tighter, allowing fabric to flow differently. It made movement easier, created shape, and allowed garments to adapt to different weather or tasks. Modern dresses with waist ties, wrap dresses, belted coats, and high-waisted silhouettes all draw from this long tradition of shaping the waist for both function and beauty. One fascinating aspect of medieval belts is how universal they were. Nearly everyone wore them. Farmers, merchants, children, travelers, people across all walks of life. This universality is rare in fashion history, where clothing often divides by class or occupation. The belt, however, was a shared habit. Today, belts retain this universality. From streetwear to formal wear, from work clothing to casual outfits, they remain one of the few fashion elements used across nearly every context. Belts also served as tools of temperature control. When a person was cold, they might tighten their belt to trap more warmth between layers. When they were hot, loosening the belt allowed clothing to breathe. This method of adjusting comfort through the waistline still exists, though modern people may not consciously recognize it. We loosen belts after meals, tighten them when wearing structured coats, adjust them based on comfort, tiny echoes of medieval instinct. The endurance of belts in modern fashion also reveals something about human nature. We appreciate balance. Visually, a defined waist creates harmony in an outfit. It divides upper and lower proportions in a way that feels natural. Medieval people discovered this by necessity. Modern people embrace it by choice. But the underlying instinct, that sense of satisfaction when a garment fits securely at the middle, is the same. If you look around today's fashion landscape, you'll see medieval belts everywhere in disguise. waist ties on dresses, sashes on coats, buckled belts on trousers, decorative belts on long cardigans, harness belts in high fashion, even minimalist, invisible belts designed purely for shaping reflect that age-old desire to gather fabric neatly. Designers regularly reference cinched silhouettes, a phrase that could easily describe medieval tunics worn with simple belts centuries ago. What's especially soothing about this connection is how quietly these habits traveled through time. No dramatic moment marked the belt's transition from medieval tool to modern accessory. Instead, it slipped through the centuries woven into the fabric of daily life, adapting to each new era without ever losing its original purpose: structure, practicality, and comfort. When you tighten a belt today, you're participating in a tradition older than many recorded histories. You're repeating a gesture made by countless people before you, tying fabric, adjusting layers, gathering warmth, preparing for the day. It is a living connection, deeply human yet effortless. In the next chapter, we'll explore another medieval habit still alive in modern fashion: the enduring influence of hoods, hats, and head coverings. How the simple need for warmth and protection shaped styles that remain in our wardrobes even now. If you step outside on a cold or windy day and instinctively pull a hood over your head, you're repeating one of the oldest clothing habits in human history, a habit that medieval people lived by every single day. The hood, in all its forms, has survived for centuries not because it was fashionable or symbolic, but because it was comforting, protective, and endlessly practical. The medieval world relied on head coverings the way we rely on scarves, jackets, and warm accessories today. And even though styles have changed, the instinct to protect the head with a covering remains deeply rooted in our wardrobes, shaped by the same quiet needs that guided people centuries ago. To understand why hoods became such an enduring part of the clothing world, imagine a medieval morning. The sun low, the air cool, and the world still wrapped in early light. Houses were cold because fires had burned down overnight, and the first breath outside felt crisp and sharp. Before stepping out to gather water, tend animals, or walk to the marketplace, people pulled on a hood or wrapped a simple cloth around their head. It wasn't a matter of style, it was instinctive protection, the same instinct that makes us zip up jackets or raise collars when the wind picks up today. Hoods in medieval Europe took many shapes. The most iconic was the simple cowl, a soft, draping hood attached to a short shoulder cape. It slipped easily over the head and rested comfortably on the shoulders, offering warmth without restricting movement. Children wore it. Travelers wore it. Workers wore it. It was as universal as the modern hoodie, and in many ways, it was its ancestor. The cowl provided warmth for the head, neck, and upper chest, areas most sensitive to cold. This layered warmth made it incredibly efficient during early morning chores or long outdoor tasks. Another common medieval hood was the liripipe, a hood with a long, trailing tail. While the long tail sometimes appears decorative in paintings, its real function was simple: it gave the wearer flexibility. They could wrap it around the neck for extra insulation, throw it over the shoulder, or use it as a convenient way to hang the hood when not worn. This small touch of versatility still exists today in garments with extended hoods, long ties, or scarf-like features designed for both warmth and styling. But medieval head coverings extended far beyond hoods. People wore coifs, small, close-fitting caps that protected the head and made outer hoods more comfortable. Coifs were incredibly practical. They kept hair in place, absorbed sweat, and prevented wool hoods from irritating the scalp. Today, knit beanies, skull caps, and soft underhood hats echo these same needs. The idea of a base layer for the head is not new. It is a medieval habit preserved through centuries of evolving materials. Hats also played an essential role in medieval clothing. Wide-brimmed hats shielded workers from sun and rain. Soft felt hats protected travelers against wind. Sturdy caps kept children warm and helped them stay comfortable during outdoor play. Even now, hats serve the same purposes: baseball caps for sun, beanies for warmth, bucket hats for rain, felt hats for cooler seasons. The shapes may have changed, but the core reasons remain familiar. One reason head coverings were so common in the medieval world is the same reason they remain common today: the head loses warmth quickly. Medieval people understood this without scientific charts or studies. They learned it through experience, through cold nights, long walks, and bitter winds. Putting something over the head was one of the quickest ways to stay comfortable. And even today, whether we're stepping into cold air or feeling a gust of wind, we instinctively protect the head. What's especially interesting is how head coverings provided emotional comfort. Medieval houses could be drafty, with breezes slipping through wooden frames and stone walls. Wearing a hood or a simple cap indoors offered a sense of security, warmth, and familiarity. The soft fabric around the head created a cocoon-like feeling, much like how people today enjoy hoodies for comfort even when they're not outdoors. The hood became a quiet refuge, something that made the wearer feel contained and protected. In medieval life, head coverings also served practical roles beyond warmth. They helped people manage hair, especially during work. Farmers and laborers didn't want hair blowing into their eyes, and coverings kept everything neat and contained. Modern equivalents include headbands, caps, bandanas, and sport hoods used for the exact same purpose. These habits reflect a timeless desire for practicality, one that doesn't change even as materials and fashions evolve. For travelers, hoods were essential. Medieval roads could be unpredictable, with sudden weather changes and long stretches without shelter. A good hood was as necessary as a cloak or sturdy boots. It could be raised in seconds, pulled close during rain, or layered with scarves and caps. Today, travelers still rely heavily on hoods built into jackets, hoodies, and outerwear. The natural movement of raising a hood during unexpected weather is the same gesture medieval people made countless times while crossing fields or walking to nearby towns. The modern hoodie, one of the most universally worn garments in the world, is perhaps the clearest descendant of medieval hoods. Its shape, purpose, and comfort align almost perfectly with medieval needs: warmth for the head and upper body, ease of movement, and a sense of personal comfort. The hoodie's popularity today, across all ages, styles, and cultures, mirrors the medieval hood's universality. It is simple, adaptable, and deeply human in its functionality. Even in high fashion, the influence of medieval head coverings appears quietly. Designers often include oversized hoods, draped headpieces, or scarf-like extensions in coats and dresses. These elements look modern, yet their roots reach back to medieval silhouettes that balanced protection with elegance. Dramatic hooded cloaks seen on runways resemble garments worn centuries ago on cold mornings and long evening walks. The scarf, another modern essential, also has medieval origins. People wrapped fabrics around their necks and shoulders for added insulation when a hood alone wasn't enough. These early wraps influenced the long scarves, shawls, and neck warmers we use today. The act of wrapping something soft around oneself for comfort is a medieval reflex that still soothes us now. Another interesting link is the idea of combining multiple head coverings, a light cap under a hood, or a hood under a cloak. This practice created layered protection and is still common today, especially in cold climates. People wear beanies under jacket hoods or caps under rain hoods, often without realizing they are repeating medieval habits perfected through generations. Head coverings also played a role in helping medieval people feel prepared. Before stepping outside, a person would check that their hood was in place, much as modern people check their jacket zippers or adjust their hats before leaving home. This ritual prepared the mind for the day's tasks. Being properly layered felt like a small but meaningful safeguard against the elements. One of the most beautiful aspects of this habit is how universal it was. Children, elders, travelers, workers, everyone wore head coverings in some form. It was one of the few clothing habits shared across nearly all social groups. And in today's world, the hood remains just as universal. It crosses generations and cultures, appearing in everything from streetwear to outdoor gear to cozy home clothing. What has allowed this habit to survive unchanged for so long is its simplicity. A head covering solves a problem instantly. It warms, protects, shields, comforts, and adapts, all with minimal effort. That efficiency made medieval hoods indispensable, and it keeps modern hoods relevant centuries later. But beyond practicality, head coverings carry emotional meaning. The feeling of lifting a hood, the quiet enclosure around the head, the way it softens sounds, and creates a small personal space. These sensations haven't changed in hundreds of years. Medieval people felt the same calming protection that we feel today when we pull a hood up in the evening or during a chilly walk. The hood is one of those rare pieces of clothing that has never truly gone out of style. It has changed shapes, fabrics, and contexts, but its purpose remains the same. It comforts, it shields, it wraps the wearer in familiarity, and that is why it endures. In the next chapter, we'll explore another medieval habit that shaped modern closets without us even noticing: the tradition of structured outerwear, coats, cloaks, and long layering garments that trace their ancestry to medieval silhouettes still seen walking in cities today. If you've ever wrapped yourself in a long coat on a cold morning, thrown a jacket over your shoulders, or felt comforted by the weight of outerwear settling gently around you, then you've experienced a habit that medieval Europeans practiced every single day. Outerwear, especially long, structured garments, was essential in the medieval world, not just for warmth, but for protection, identity, and even emotional comfort. And although the materials, shapes, and styles have changed dramatically over the centuries, the instinct behind this clothing has remained almost exactly the same. Stepping into medieval Europe, the first thing you might notice about people's clothing is the length of their outer garments. Cloaks draped down to the knees or even the ankles. Heavy wool mantles wrapped around the body like soft shields. Long surcoats layered over tunics. Outer gowns for both men and women hung in flowing lines that echoed the natural fall of the fabric. These garments were not dramatic costumes from legends. They were everyday necessities, shaped by weather, work, and a world without central heating or modern insulation. What is remarkable is that these silhouettes never truly vanished. Today's trench coats, overcoats, wool coats, capes, ponchos, long cardigans, and even modern raincoats carry subtle echoes of medieval outerwear. When you put on a long garment that moves with you, or when you feel the reassuring weight of fabric against your back, you're participating in a tradition that has flowed quietly through centuries. Medieval outerwear was designed with a deep understanding of practicality. The cloak, for example, was among the most versatile pieces of clothing ever created. It was simple, a large piece of fabric, often wool, shaped to drape over the shoulders. But this simplicity held extraordinary usefulness. A cloak kept the body warm by trapping air between its layers. Its length protected the legs and torso from wind and rain. It could be wrapped tightly around the chest on cold mornings or thrown back when more movement was needed. It served as a blanket during travel, a cushion when sitting outdoors, and a shield against dust or snow. This multifunctional nature is still seen today. Modern coats, especially long ones, provide not only warmth but a sense of readiness. When someone steps outside wearing a long coat, they feel equipped, much like a medieval traveler striding through a field or village road with a cloak fluttering behind them. One of the most distinctive features of medieval outerwear was how it balanced structure with softness. Cloaks flowed freely, adapting to movement and weather, while wool coats and surcoats gave more shape to the body. This combination allowed people to stay both comfortable and agile. In modern clothing, we still seek this balance. Oversized coats that move with the wind, tailored coats that hold their shape, and lightweight garments that layer easily all reflect medieval principles of balancing form and function. The fabrics used in medieval outerwear also influenced modern preferences. Wool was the king of all materials, durable, warm, naturally water-resistant, and available in many densities. Even today, wool remains one of the most beloved fabrics for winter coats. Its ability to insulate while allowing breathability is a timeless trait. When modern designers choose wool for coats, they are relying on qualities that medieval people understood intuitively through centuries of everyday wear. Another medieval garment that quietly shaped modern outerwear is the mantle, a more refined version of the cloak, sometimes fastened with a decorative clasp or brooch. It added elegance to practicality, offering warmth while displaying craftsmanship. Today's capes, shawls, and draped coats echo this same idea. Movement blended with beauty, warmth blended with grace. But medieval outerwear did more than protect bodies. It shaped identity. The length, color, and cut of outer garments often revealed a person's role, region, or lifestyle. Travelers wore sturdy, weather-resistant cloaks. Workers wore shorter, more practical outer layers. Wealthier families wore garments made of finer wool, carefully tailored and sometimes lined. And although modern fashion is far more flexible, long coats still carry quiet symbolism. A long coat feels formal. Structured outerwear feels powerful. A soft draped coat feels comforting. We still let outerwear speak for us, just as medieval people did without thinking. Another fascinating connection to modern fashion is the way medieval people layered outerwear. Cloaks were often worn over tunics and surcoats, especially in colder regions. These layers created a distinctive silhouette, a slim inner line under a wide, flowing outer shape. Modern fashion designers still recreate this look, a fitted outfit underneath a dramatic coat, a sleek silhouette paired with something oversized. This layered contrast began in practicality, but evolved into an enduring aesthetic. Medieval outerwear was also shaped by climate more than any other category of clothing. In northern regions, winters were harsh, winds strong, and rain frequent. People learned to trust long garments that could shield most of the body. This is why long outerwear endures so strongly in colder climates today. When warmth is essential, fashion naturally returns to medieval forms: long coats, heavy fabrics, layered designs. These shapes persist not because they are old, but because they still work. Medieval outerwear also served as a form of personal space in a world without much privacy. A cloak wrapped tightly around the body created a sense of enclosure, much like how a hood creates a personal cocoon. A long coat today can feel like a small room you carry with you, a quiet space that buffers you from the world, wind, noise, and busy streets. The emotional comfort of outerwear is a medieval inheritance. When someone pulls a coat close or wraps themselves in a long cardigan, they're repeating gestures made countless times by people preparing for cold mornings centuries ago. Another detail that survived across time is how outerwear adapts to movement. Medieval coats and cloaks were designed to be practical for walking, riding, working outdoors, and standing for long periods. They needed to flow rather than restrict. Today, good outerwear still focuses on the same principles. Coats with back vents, capes that drape over the shoulders, slits that allow arms to move freely, and fabrics that resist wind. All these details echo medieval design solutions. Even modern raincoats reflect medieval thinking. Medieval people didn't have waterproof fabrics, but they used tightly woven wool that repelled rain and snow surprisingly well. Some cloaks even had special shapes that caused rain to drip away from the body. Modern rainwear, with its emphasis on coverage and practicality, continues this tradition in spirit, if not material. Perhaps the most striking survival of medieval outerwear is the cape. Though not an everyday garment for most people now, capes appear regularly in fashion cycles, runway shows, winter collections, and elegant evening wear. They symbolize drama, protection, and timelessness, all characteristics they once conveyed in medieval villages and towns. Even children's clothing often includes cape-like hoods or poncho shapes, continuing the tradition in soft, playful forms. Beyond functionality, medieval outerwear gave people a sense of presence. A long garment made movement feel purposeful. The weight of fabric changed the wearer's posture, creating a slow, confident rhythm. Today's long coats still do this. When someone walks with a coat flowing behind them, they inherit that medieval sense of steady motion, deliberate, grounded, and quietly elegant. What is truly remarkable is how medieval outerwear survived not through direct imitation, but through instinct. Designers reinvent silhouettes, brands reimagine trends, and consumers choose what feels right. Yet the shapes born from medieval practicality keep returning. They appear in long winter coats, in oversized outerwear, in cozy ponchos, in structured wool garments, and in draping capes. This endurance tells us something gentle yet profound. Human comfort hasn't changed much. The feeling of being wrapped in warmth, protected from wind, and embraced by fabric is universal and timeless. Medieval people understood this deeply, even without words. And when we wrap ourselves in long coats today, we follow the same quiet truth. In the next chapter, we drift into another medieval habit still alive in modern fashion: the universal love of boots and sturdy footwear. How shoes built for walking long distances shaped many of the styles we wear today. If you look down at your shoes, whether you're wearing comfortable sneakers, sturdy boots, soft indoor shoes, or something simple for everyday errands, you might not realize that your modern footwear carries quiet echoes of medieval life. The shapes, purposes, and instincts behind the shoes we choose today have roots that stretch back many centuries. Medieval people walked constantly, through fields, across uneven roads, along village paths, up and down winding stairs, and through changing weather every day. Footwear wasn't an accessory or a stylistic choice. It was a tool of daily survival. And even after centuries of innovation, padding, stitching, and new materials, we still unconsciously follow many of the same habits they developed. To understand how medieval footwear habits still exist today, imagine a medieval morning before the world fully wakes. The streets are cool, the air is damp, and the ground is uneven with soil, grass, or cobblestones. Before stepping outside, a person reaches for their shoes or boots, not out of luxury, but necessity. Soft indoor shoes or thin leather slippers prepare the feet for cold floors. Sturdier outdoor shoes protect the soles from rocks and uneven terrain. Boots shield the legs from mud, moisture, and undergrowth. This simple rhythm, indoor softness, outdoor sturdiness, still lives in our modern habits. We change from house shoes to street shoes, from light footwear to supportive boots, without thinking. It feels natural because it has been natural for centuries. Medieval shoes were simpler in construction than modern ones, yet they were surprisingly clever. Most were made from leather, shaped by hand, and stitched with durability in mind. Even though they lacked modern soles or cushioning, they were tailored to real life. Walking long distances, working on rough ground, and facing weather that could change by the hour. Footwear was not decorative. It was practical, dependable, and built to endure the daily demands of life. This focus on practicality is still part of footwear design today. Even the most stylish modern boots balance appearance with function, just as medieval craftspeople balanced simple beauty with survival. One of the most direct ancestors of modern footwear is the medieval boot. Boots were crucial for travel and labor, especially in wet or muddy environments. They rose higher on the leg, protected against cold, and provided support during long days outdoors. When you see modern hiking boots, rain boots, work boots, or even fashionable high boots, you re-seeing the continuation of a medieval instinct. That footwear should protect not only the foot, but also the ankle and lower leg. Even the feeling of slipping into a pair of sturdy boots today carries echoes of medieval mornings, a quiet sense that you are prepared for whatever lies outside your door. Medieval people also understood the importance of grip. The roads and fields they walked through were unpredictable. Wet earth, slippery stones, sandy paths, and grassy slopes required shoes that could handle change. Leather soles, though not as advanced as modern rubber, were shaped and textured by wear, gradually conforming to the ground and the foot. This organic shaping made medieval shoes surprisingly secure after they had been broken in. Today's enthusiasm for breaking in new shoes comes from the same idea, that footwear becomes better, more comfortable, and more trustworthy once it molds to its wearer. Another medieval habit that survived into modern times is the distinction between everyday footwear and travel footwear. In the medieval world, people often had one simple pair for village tasks and another sturdier pair for longer journeys or heavier work. Even if someone owned only two pairs of shoes, they treated them differently. One was soft and flexible, the other firm and weather-resistant. Today, most people instinctively choose certain shoes for walking long distances, certain shoes for work, and certain shoes for comfort, a quiet inheritance of medieval practicality. Seasonal footwear also existed. In colder months, medieval people stuffed their shoes with straw or soft cloth to add insulation. They wore thicker socks woven from wool or linen. They chose taller boots for warmth and protection. This layering concept still exists. Modern winter boots with padding, fleece linings, and insulation accomplish the same purpose as medieval straw-stuffed footwear, warmth through thoughtful inserts and materials. Even the habit of wearing thicker socks in winter or changing to lighter shoes in spring reflects a tradition older than many buildings standing today. One of the most fascinating aspects of medieval footwear is how it influenced modern shoe shapes. Many medieval shoes had pointed toes, not the dramatic, elongated points we imagine from myths, but gentle tapers that made walking easier on narrow paths. This shape returned many times throughout history and still appears in modern fashion. Round-toed medieval shoes also resemble many casual footwear styles today. Even the structure of soft slippers used indoors during medieval evenings can be seen in modern house shoes and minimalist footwear. Medieval footwear was not only practical, it was emotional. Shoes represented readiness for the day's tasks. Putting on shoes signaled a shift from rest to work, from indoors to outdoors, from stillness to movement. Today, putting on shoes still marks the beginning of the day for many people. There is something grounding in the act, a quiet ritual that medieval people knew well. Removing shoes at the end of the day also carried emotional meaning. It symbolized rest, safety, and the warmth of home. Many modern households practice the same ritual, whether consciously or simply by habit. Another interesting medieval habit was repairing shoes instead of replacing them. Shoemakers and cobblers played important roles in communities, stitching new soles, reinforcing heels, or reshaping leather to extend a shoe's life. People didn't discard shoes easily, they valued durability. Today, although many shoes are replaced quickly, the rising interest in shoe repair, sustainable fashion, and long-lasting footwear echoes medieval values. Even high-quality boots today are designed with replaceable soles, a direct nod to centuries-old craftsmanship. Walking itself shaped medieval footwear habits, and those habits shaped shoes in return. People walked far more often than we do today. Roads were uneven, surfaces were unpredictable, and travel was a slow process done step by step. Footwear was built to support this lifestyle. When modern people seek out comfortable walking shoes, cushioned insoles, stable arches, or all-terrain footwear, they are addressing the same needs medieval people faced: the need for stability, comfort, and endurance during long journeys. Outdoor work also guided medieval footwear design. Farmers, shepherds, and builders needed shoes that protected their feet from sharp stones, thorns, tools, or heavy objects. This influenced the sturdier boots used in modern labor industries. Work boots with reinforced toes, durable soles, and supportive ankles are direct descendants of medieval practical footwear. Even soldiers' boots today trace their lineage to medieval footwear designed for strength on long marches and rough ground. But footwear also carried symbolic meaning in medieval life. Shoes indicated activity. Being barefoot indoors represented comfort and safety. Wearing shoes indoors sometimes signaled readiness or urgency. These emotional cues still exist today. People often feel different when wearing shoes versus being barefoot. Shoes can make someone feel prepared, steady, or grounded. Exactly the feelings medieval people experienced centuries ago. Another charming parallel between medieval and modern habits is the way children interacted with footwear. Medieval children often wore smaller versions of adult shoes, simple leather pieces shaped to fit tiny feet. They grew quickly and needed new shoes often, so families sometimes reused or reshaped old pairs. The tradition of children wearing soft shoes indoors or sturdy shoes outdoors continues today. Even the way parents check a child's shoe fit, pressing the toe to ensure space, has been done for centuries. Some medieval shoes were beautifully decorated with patterns or stitching, reflecting personal taste or regional styles. While protection was the priority, people still expressed themselves subtly through their footwear. Today's fashion continues this tradition in countless ways: decorative stitching, colored laces, embossed leather, patterns on sneakers, artistic boots. Even the idea of footwear as a form of identity has medieval roots. The emotional comfort of sturdy footwear may be the strongest connection of all. There is something reassuring about stepping outside with solid shoes, knowing your feet are protected. Medieval people felt this deeply. A good pair of shoes could mean the difference between comfort and hardship, especially during winter or long travel. Today, when someone chooses shoes they trust, for work, walking, traveling, or simply feeling safe outdoors, they are connected directly to medieval instincts. What makes medieval footwear habits so enduring is their simplicity. The body needs protection. The ground is unpredictable. Weather changes. Movement demands stability. These truths haven't changed, so the habits built around them haven't changed either. We still choose footwear based on these quiet needs, shaped by centuries of experience passed from one generation to the next. When you lace up your shoes, zip up your boots, or slip into comfortable slippers at home, you're participating in a tradition older than many countries, older than many languages, older than modern fashion itself. Footwear connects us to the past in one of the most practical and intimate ways, step by step, day by day. In the next chapter, we'll explore yet another medieval habit still present in today's clothing: the use of natural fabrics. How will linen and leather shaped medieval wardrobes and continue to influence modern fashion choices across the world? If you open your closet and run your hand across different fabrics, you'll notice something surprising. Despite all the innovation of modern textile factories, synthetic blends, engineered fibers, stretchy materials, and weather-resistant coatings, some of the fabrics you use most often are the same ones medieval people relied on every day. Wool, linen, leather, cotton in later centuries. These natural materials were the backbone of medieval clothing, not because people lacked alternatives, but because these fabrics worked. They protected, breathed, comforted, and adapted to the world around them in ways we still appreciate today. This quiet endurance tells us something gentle yet profound about human clothing habits. No matter how much time passes, some materials remain irreplaceable. And the way medieval people used these fabrics continues to shape modern wardrobes, from winter coats to summer shirts, from sturdy boots to soft household linens. To understand how natural fabrics shaped medieval life, imagine the daily environment. Homes were drafty and cool. Weather could shift suddenly. Work was physical, requiring clothes that moved easily and endured constant wear. Clothing wasn't purchased frequently. Garments had to last through countless tasks, seasons, and repairs. In such a world, fabrics weren't chosen for appearance alone. They were chosen for reliability. Wool was the undeniable king of medieval textiles. It insulated even when damp, resisted wind, and adapted to various thicknesses depending on how it was woven. A tightly woven wool cloak could block rain. A lighter wool tunic offered flexibility for work. Soft wool garments served as comforting layers in winter. When you feel the warmth of a wool sweater today or wrap yourself in a wool coat, you're experiencing the same dependable protection medieval people trusted during cold mornings, long journeys, and quiet evenings by the hearth. Wool's longevity isn't accidental. It is a fabric shaped perfectly to the human need for warmth and comfort. Medieval people instinctively understood how to work with wool. They spun it to different densities, felted it for durability, and tailored it into shapes that offered mobility. They layered wool garments to trap heat efficiently. Even now, high-quality modern coats, scarves, and blankets still rely on the same principles. While technology has changed production methods, the fundamental qualities of wool remain timeless: warmth, breathability, durability, and a gentle embrace against the cold. Linen, another medieval favorite, served a very different purpose. If wool was the warm shield of the wardrobe, linen was the cool foundation. Linen shirts, undergarments, and dresses formed the base layer of medieval clothing because linen absorbed moisture, dried quickly, and felt gentle against the skin. It could be washed more often than wool, making it ideal for garments worn close to the body. Today, linen shirts, summer dresses, bedding, and lightweight pants are valued for the exact same reasons. The cool crispness of linen on a warm day connects us directly to medieval mornings when people reached for linen layers before beginning their tasks. What's remarkable is how sustainable these fabrics were, long before sustainability became a modern concern. Linen was made from flax, a plant that grew readily in many regions, required simple tools to harvest, and could be processed locally. Wool came from sheep raised near communities, providing both fabric and food. Leather came from animals already raised for other purposes. Medieval life, without meaning to, embraced a cycle of natural resources that flowed through daily routines. Today, many people return to natural fabrics for their ecological benefits, unknowingly stepping into a medieval rhythm of clothing production. Leather, too, played an essential role in medieval clothing, especially footwear and accessories. Leather shoes shaped themselves to the wearer's foot, becoming more comfortable with time. Leather belts offered durability and flexibility. Leather pouches hung from belts to carry everyday items. Modern leather boots, belts, bags, and jackets continue the tradition of relying on leather's remarkable strength and adaptability. Even the emotional feeling of wearing well-crafted leather, secure, grounded, reliable, hasn't changed. One of the most interesting medieval habits was the layering of natural fabrics. Linen closest to the skin, wool above it, leather used for reinforcement or protection. This layering allowed each material to do what it did best. Linen cooled and softened. Wool warmed and insulated. Leather shielded and supported. Modern clothing still follows this principle, even when synthetic fabrics are present. Base layers are often soft and breathable. Middle layers hold warmth. Outer layers protect. The logic is medieval, even if the textiles are newer. Natural fabrics also shaped medieval clothing habits because they reflected the seasons. In summer, people turned to linen and lightweight wool. In winter, heavier wool layers appeared. During transitional months, mixtures of fabrics were common. This seasonal awareness continues today. We choose linen in warm weather, wool in cold weather, and blends during mild seasons. Not because of tradition, but because the fabrics simply feel right. Medieval tailors and household crafters also developed a deep understanding of how natural fabrics aged. Linen softened with every wash. Wool became more flexible over time. Leather molded to the body. These changes were part of the garment's charm. Likewise, many people today prefer clothes that soften with wear or develop character as they age. A well-worn denim jacket, a favorite wool sweater, a softened linen shirt. These items carry the same emotional comfort medieval garments once offered. They become companions rather than objects. Repairs were also a natural part of medieval clothing habits. Because fabrics were valuable, people learned to mend, patch, reinforce, and rework garments repeatedly. A wool cloak might be repaired dozens of times. A linen shirt might be patched at elbows and seams. Leather shoes were resoled or restitched. Modern interest in visible mending, upcycling, and repair culture reflects this medieval mindset. The belief that natural fabrics deserve care and longevity. Natural fabrics shaped identity as well. Different regions had their own weaving styles, wool qualities, and linen textures. A traveler could sometimes tell where someone was from by the type of wool they wore or how their linen was woven. Today, certain regions are still known for their fabric traditions: Irish wool, French linen, Italian leather, living continuations of medieval craftsmanship. The emotional impact of natural fabrics was subtle but powerful. Wool provided security in winter. Linen offered freshness in summer. Leather gave confidence in movement. When someone wrapped themselves in wool on a cold medieval evening, the warmth was physical and emotional. It signaled safety, rest, and protection. We still feel this today when we wrap a soft blanket around our shoulders, pull on a warm sweater, or sink into fresh linen bedding. Despite all technological advancements in synthetic materials, natural fabrics remain central to modern fashion for the same reasons medieval people valued them. They breathe, they adapt, they comfort, they last, and they carry a sense of connection to the earth that synthetic fibers often lack. The persistence of natural fabrics through centuries reveals something quiet but essential. Human needs haven. Tea changed as much as we think. We still seek warmth in winter and coolness in summer. We still want clothes that breathe and move with us. We still appreciate garments that age gracefully. And we still instinctively trust the same materials medieval people relied on. Wool coats, linen shirts, leather boots, cotton underlayers. These are not modern inventions. They are threads woven through time, carrying centuries of knowledge, instinct, and craftsmanship. In the next chapter, we'll explore how medieval color choices and dyeing habits still influence modern fashion, why we continue to gravitate towards certain tones, and how those ancient preferences shape today's palettes in ways we rarely notice. If you open your wardrobe and look at the colors inside, the deep earth tones, the warm browns, the soft creams, the gentle greens, the rich blues, the muted reds. You may not realize that many of these shades come directly from the habits and limitations of medieval dyeing. Long before synthetic dyes filled the world with endless color choices, medieval people relied on natural sources: plants, roots, bark, minerals, and insects. The palette this world created was limited but beautiful, shaped by the land, the climate, and the seasons. And though modern fashion has expanded far beyond those early shades, our instinct for many natural colors still flows from that era. Medieval color habits were not simply trends. They were shaped by availability, practicality, and the deep relationship people had with the environment. Colors carried meaning, yes, but more importantly, they carried comfort. Even now, when people choose earthy tones for warmth, blues for calmness, greens for balance, and muted colors for everyday wear, they unknowingly follow a medieval palette that has survived for centuries. To understand how this palette formed, imagine the dyes available to a medieval household or dyer's workshop. There were no bright neon hues, no chemical fluorescence, no industrial pigments saturated into cloth. Instead, colors came from nature, and nature offered steady, grounded tones. Browns from walnut husks, oak bark, or soil-rich mixtures. Greens from herbs and leaves, though often muted or unstable. Yellows from plants like weld or onion skins. Soft creams and beiges from undyed wool and linen. Deep blues from the precious indigo-like plant known as woad. Muted reds from madder roots. All of these colors blended into a harmonious palette that visually defined medieval life. When people today choose cozy earth tones, soft neutrals, or calming natural colors, they're drawn to the same comfort medieval palettes provided. Colors that feel grounded, quiet, and connected to the earth. One of the most enduring medieval colors is natural beige or cream, the color of undyed linen or wool. Medieval clothing often showed these tones because not everyone had access to dyes. Even those who did sometimes preferred letting the fabric remain natural to avoid fading during repeated washing. Today's love for neutral wardrobes, white shirts, cream sweaters, beige coats, oatmeal-toned scarves, comes from the same instinct, simplicity and purity in textile color. Wool especially retained its natural shades. Browns, grays, tans, and off-whites were common, depending on the sheep breed. These natural wool tones appear constantly in modern knitwear, winter coats, blankets, and accessories. Designers often refer to them as timeless neutrals, though their timelessness comes from medieval necessity. Another color that found its way through centuries is woad blue. Woad dye, when processed carefully, produced a soft but steady blue that medieval people loved. It was calm, reliable, and long-lasting. Even today, the prevalence of denim blue, perhaps the most universal color in modern fashion, echoes this ancient preference. The reason blue feels so soothing and natural to wear is partly because humans have been wearing versions of it for hundreds of years. Our eyes are used to blue clothing in a gentle, habitual way born in medieval dye pits and workshops. Reds in medieval times were often muted rather than bright. Madder root produced warm brick tones, earthy terracotta reds, and burnt rose shades depending on how the dye was prepared. These shades remain deeply popular in modern fashion: rust-colored sweaters, terracotta scarves, warm reddish-brown coats, muted burgundy dresses. They feel familiar because they echo the oldest wearable reds known to many cultures. Greens in medieval Europe were trickier. Plant-based greens often faded quickly or shifted toward yellow unless over-dyed using blue first. As a result, many medieval greens were soft, gentle, and earthy. Today's sage greens, olive tones, mossy colors, pale forest greens, and dusty mint shades are all descendants of medieval dye limitations. They remain popular because they feel grounded and organic, exactly how medieval artisans experienced them. Yellow was easier to achieve, and medieval yellows came from flowers, bark, and plant resins. But because bright yellows were hard to produce without fading, clothing often appeared in soft gold, wheat, and honey tones. These warm shades still appear constantly in modern sweaters, scarves, and outerwear. Even interior design trends favor these muted yellows for their calming warmth, an emotional echo of medieval textiles. Perhaps the most fascinating influence from medieval dyeing is the preference for muted tones rather than extremely bright colors. Medieval Europe had few vibrant dyes, and even the boldest shades softened over time due to washing, sunlight, and wear. This created wardrobes filled with naturally harmonious tones. No harsh contrasts, no jarring brightness, just a gentle spectrum of colors shaped by nature. Modern minimalist, fashion, earthy palettes, neutral tones, and soft seasonal color trends often replicate these medieval aesthetic principles, even unintentionally. People find such tones relaxing because they reflect natural environments. Medieval people lived fully within these environments, so their clothing naturally reflected the land around them: the soil, fields, bark, sky, leaves, and flowers. The emotional connection to medieval colors continues in subtle ways today. When someone chooses a wool coat in a deep forest green or warm brown, they are drawn to tones humans have trusted for centuries. These colors feel safe, steady, familiar. They soften the visual noise of the world, just as they soften the harshness of medieval winters and modestly lit interiors. Color also shaped identity in medieval communities. Certain colors hinted at status or occupation not because of symbolism, but because some dyes were harder to produce. While we won't enter symbolic or religious associations, the practical side remains relevant. Difficult dyes resulted in rare colors. This same principle exists today in how certain shades become seasonal luxury colors, depending on dyeing cost or fabric type. The emotional impact, that feeling of specialness when wearing a rich, deep color, is inherited from medieval rarity. Medieval dyeing also shaped modern fashion through texture and appearance. Natural dyes rarely produced flat, uniform tones. They often created soft variations, flecks of lighter or darker shade, or gentle gradients. Today's designers intentionally recreate these effects. Washed fabrics, tonal variations in denim, hand-dyed wool, and garments with subtle color irregularities are celebrated for their natural beauty, all reminiscent of medieval textile aesthetics. What's incredible is how natural fabric and dyeing habits shaped not only medieval clothing, but the entire atmosphere of medieval life. Inside a village, one would see a landscape of earthy greens, browns, grays, soft blues, and muted reds. This palette extended to modern design more than we realize. When photographers or filmmakers try to evoke calm, heritage, or rustic comfort, they often use these same color tones. These medieval hues became visual symbols of warmth, history, and humanity. The endurance of these colors shows how much clothing reflects the world around us. Medieval people dressed in shades of the land because those were the materials available. Modern people choose similar shades because they feel organic, soothing, and timeless. The connection to nature's palette, especially one shaped by centuries of human experience, continues in our closets, jackets, scarves, and favorite everyday outfits. When you choose a cream sweater, a deep green jacket, a warm brown coat, or soft gray knitwear, you are participating in a medieval tradition of color that has quietly survived through countless generations. Not because it was fashionable then or now, but because it feels right, gentle on the eyes, calming to the heart, and grounded in nature. In the next chapter, we'll explore another medieval habit that still echoes in modern fashion: the use of simple closures and fastenings, ties, lacings, buttons, and toggles, and how these old methods shape the way we open, close, adjust, and secure our clothing today. If you pause for a moment and think about how many times a day you fasten, tighten, adjust, or secure your clothing, you might be surprised by how familiar these actions would feel to someone living in medieval Europe. Whether you tie shoelaces, button a coat, pull a drawstring, adjust a belt, or fasten toggles on a jacket, you're using methods that were already well established hundreds of years ago. Medieval people didn't have zippers or snaps, but they developed an entire vocabulary of closures that allowed garments to be practical, adaptable, comfortable, and personal. And in many ways, we still use these habits instinctively. Medieval clothing needed to be adjustable because bodies moved constantly. People walked long distances, worked outdoors, carried tools, layered clothing for warmth, and adapted to unpredictable weather. A garment had to be more than just fabric. It had to respond to daily life. Closures such as ties, lacings, buttons, toggles, brooches, cord loops, and simple knots allowed clothing to shift, tighten, loosen, and transform as needed. Modern fashion retains these solutions, not because we consciously imitate medieval habits, but because they still work beautifully. Imagine a medieval morning. Someone wakes, pulls on their linen base layer, and begins tying it closed. The ties might be at the chest or under the arms. Then comes the middle layer, a tunic or gown, adjusted with side lacings to fit the body more comfortably. Perhaps a belt is added, pulled snugly to gather fabric and hold tools. Footwear is secured with laces or simple straps. Cloaks fasten with pins or toggles at the shoulder. Every step in this routine involves binding, fastening, or adjusting, just like modern dressing. These quiet actions, tying, looping, pulling, became so habitual that they remain with us today in almost unchanged form. One of the most enduring medieval fastenings is the drawstring. Medieval people used drawstrings everywhere, on bags, purses, hoods, waistlines, sleeves, and shoes. Drawstrings allowed quick adjustment and secure closure without complicated hardware. They were made from cord, braided threads, or softened leather strips. Today, drawstrings appear in hoodies, sweatpants, jackets, backpacks, tote bags, and even shoes. The reason they never disappeared is simple. They are intuitive, fast, adaptable, and minimal. When you pull a drawstring hoodie tight on a cold day, you are repeating a gesture made by countless medieval people preparing for the morning chill. Another deeply rooted medieval fastening is lacing. Side lacing or front lacing tunics allowed for a customized fit. Garments could be loosened in summer, tightened in winter, let out to accommodate layers, or adjusted for comfort during work. Medieval lacing was practical, not decorative, though over time, it became both. Modern fashion still relies on lacing for shoes, boots, dresses, corset-inspired tops, waist-cinching jackets, and even athletic wear. Lacing survives because it offers control. It allows the wearer to shape the garment to their own comfort and needs, mirroring the adaptability medieval people valued. Toggles, those simple loop and button closures often found on winter coats, also trace their origins to medieval outerwear. Toggles were easy to fasten even with cold hands or gloves. They were durable, resistant to breakage, and ideal for thick woolen garments. Today, toggles appear on duffel coats, children's jackets, and cozy cardigans. Their presence in modern winter clothing mirrors the medieval logic. In cold months, we need closures that are sturdy and simple to manage. Buttons existed in the medieval world too, though they were often used decoratively before becoming functional closures in later centuries. Early buttons were made from wood, bone, horn, or metal. They fastened cloaks, sleeves, and garments requiring structure. Modern buttons are more advanced, but the emotional familiarity of buttoning a coat or fastening cuffs reflects centuries of habit. The motion feels natural because humans have been doing it for a very long time. Perhaps the most versatile medieval method was the simple tie. Ties made from fabric strips or cords were used nearly everywhere clothing needed to be secured, at wrists, necklines, waists, hems, and openings. They allowed clothing to expand or contract depending on the season, body shape, or layer count. Even now, ties appear in wrap dresses, robe belts, apron strings, and adjustable sleepwear. They persist because they are gentle, quiet, and adaptable, a perfect reflection of medieval textile philosophy. Closures were not only functional, they shaped the silhouette. A tunic tightened with side lacing created gentle curves or angles. A gown tied beneath the chest or at the waist created flow and drape. A hood pulled tight around the face framed it softly. These shapes ripple into modern clothing design. Tops that gather at the waist, jackets with adjustable fits, shoes that mold to the foot through lacing. Our understanding of fit and comfort is still influenced by medieval closures that taught us how clothing should move with the body. What's especially meaningful is how these fastenings provided emotional reassurance. A tied garment felt secure. A laced shoe promised support during long walks. A buttoned cloak offered warmth against wind. People trusted their fastenings the way we trust zippers or Velcro today. And yet, even with technological alternatives, the medieval methods remain widespread because they carry a tactile sense of control, something people still crave in clothing. The process of dressing with medieval closures was also ritualistic in a gentle, comforting way. Each tie had its place. Each lace had its purpose. Each toggle or button created a pause in the morning, a moment of preparation. People didn't rush the way we do today, but the mindset behind fastening clothing hasn't vanished. Even in modern life, fastening a coat or tightening a scarf creates a moment of grounding, a small transition between indoors and outdoors, rest and activity. These gestures remain emotionally steadying. Another fascinating continuation of medieval fastenings appears in modern sportswear and outdoor gear. Adjustable straps, pull cords on jackets, lace-up hiking boots, and even elastic waist garments follow principles medieval people developed through necessity. Clothes that adapt to movement, terrain, and weather. The medieval world required flexibility from clothing, and our modern world does too. Fastenings also shaped medieval identity. Certain closures appeared more often in specific regions or occupations. Leather laces might indicate outdoor work. Decorative toggles could hint at craftsmanship. Functional closures communicated lifestyle in subtle ways. Today, this dynamic still exists. Lace-up boots convey ruggedness. Button-up coats convey structure. Tie-waist dresses feel soft and relaxed. Clothing fastenings communicate mood and identity more than we realize. Medieval fastenings also influenced how people cared for clothing. Garments could be taken apart or loosened for washing, altered for growing children, or repaired at worn points. Laces and ties made clothing flexible in longevity. Today, many adjustable garments share this same intention: maternity wear, children's clothing with Grow With Me waistbands, adjustable jackets with drawstrings. These ideas are not inventions of modern designers, but continuations of medieval practicality. The emotional connection to closures still surfaces today. Children learn to tie laces the same way medieval children learned. Adults feel satisfaction tightening a belt or fastening a coat's final button. Even the small moment of loosening shoelaces at the end of the day carries a relief medieval workers knew well after long walks home. Closures teach us a gentle truth about fashion history. The most effective solutions rarely disappear. Instead, they travel quietly through the centuries, adapting but never losing their core purpose. Medieval fastenings survive because they answer basic human needs: adjustability, security, comfort, and expression. When you pull a drawstring, tie a knot, lace your shoes, or fasten a button, you are echoing movements practiced for hundreds of years. These are tiny, everyday gestures that connect you to centuries of clothing wisdom, carried forward not through instruction, but through instinct. In the next chapter, we'll explore another medieval habit woven deeply into modern wardrobes: the love of pockets, pouches, and small carried containers. How medieval people managed belongings before pockets existed, and why their habits still guide the way we carry items today. If you think about the things you carry every day: keys, a phone, coins, cards, small personal items, you probably tuck them into your pockets, slip them into a bag, or wear a pouch of some kind. These habits feel instinctive now, deeply woven into daily routines. But medieval Europe lived in a world without built-in pockets. Clothing flowed, draped, and wrapped, but rarely included the sewn-in personal storage we take for granted today. Instead, people developed habits of carrying items externally, using pouches, bags, belts, straps, and clever attachments that shape the way we still move with our belongings now. What's remarkable is how naturally these medieval solutions evolved into modern accessories. Shoulder bags, crossbody pouches, belt bags, handbags, tool belts, even tiny coin purses. All of these are echoes of needs that began centuries ago, when daily life required people to keep essentials close while their hands remained free. Despite the world changing dramatically since then, the core habits remain surprisingly consistent, because the human need to carry small, important objects hasn't changed at all. To understand these medieval habits, imagine stepping into a village morning. Someone prepares to leave home, maybe to fetch water, visit a market, or work outdoors. They pick up a small leather pouch tied to a cord and loop it around their belt. Inside might be coins, a small knife, a few items for trade, or tools for the day. This simple pouch is the medieval ancestor of the modern wallet or small crossbody bag. It wasn't decorative, it was essential. And because clothing rarely had pockets, these pouches helped people move confidently through their routines. Belts became storage systems. From them hung pouches, tools, keys, and sometimes decorative items. The image of a medieval person with objects at their waist is essentially the same as a modern person wearing a belt bag or clipped keychain. Even the emotional comfort of feeling personal items securely attached hasn't changed. A medieval traveler touching the pouch at their side for reassurance is not unlike someone today patting their bag or pocket to check that their keys are still there. In households, people used larger bags for carrying goods, soft cloth sacks for grain, sturdy leather bags for tools, woven baskets for produce. The same principles shape tote bags, reusable grocery bags, and backpacks today. Items need to be carried safely, comfortably, and in ways that free the hands. The medieval world did not invent bags, but it perfected the habit of attaching them to daily routines in ways that still feel natural now. Children also wore pouches, often carrying tiny treasures, food scraps, or small tools for play and chores. This quiet tradition survives in miniature backpacks, children's waist pouches, and playful small bags used today. Accessories that feel practical and comforting to little hands, just as they did centuries ago. One of the most fascinating medieval carrying habits was the use of chatelaines, small sets of items attached to a belt with chains, often including keys, scissors, or tools. Those chatelaines developed more formally in later centuries. Their medieval roots are clear. People needed important objects visible and ready to use. Modern tool belts, keychains, lanyards, multi-tools, and even pocket clips echo this instinct. The desire to access things quickly has never disappeared. It's simply adapted to new objects and new lifestyles. Drawstring pouches were especially common. Medieval people used them the way we use wallets or cosmetic bags today. They held coins, herbs, sewing needles, small food portions, and anything else that needed to stay contained. Drawstrings made them easy to open, close, and carry. Modern drawstring bags, used for gyms, shoes, or personal items, follow the same simple logic: secure closure with quick access. The emotional attachment to personal bags also began in medieval times. A pouch wasn't just a container. It represented preparedness, independence, and the ability to move freely. Having essential items at hand felt empowering. Modern bags elicit the same feeling. Many people feel incomplete without their bag, not because of fashion, but because the habit of carrying personal items runs deep in human behavior. Another medieval habit that shaped modern fashion is the use of layered storage. People often wore multiple pouches for different purposes, much like how modern bags often include compartments or how some people carry multiple bags depending on their needs. The division of belongings into specific containers, tools in one pouch, coins in another, food in a third, reflects organizational instincts that persist in modern purses, backpacks, tech cases, and travel accessories. Medieval carrying habits also influenced how people designed their clothing. Because pockets were not built in, garments had to leave room for hanging pouches and attached containers. This created silhouettes where belts sat visibly at the waist and outer garments allowed easy access to pouches beneath. Even today, the popularity of high-waisted designs, belt loops, and accessible layers reflects centuries of adjusting clothing around the items we carry. One of the most enduring modern descendants of medieval carrying habits is the handbag. Though handbags evolved through many forms over time, their earliest medieval ancestor is the simple belt-hung pouch. The modern handbag expanded the idea, adding handles and structure, but its purpose remained the same: carry essential belongings with comfort and confidence. The importance people place on their handbags today, the routine of checking it, holding it close, organizing its contents, mirrors the careful way medieval people kept their pouches tied securely. Backpacks also share medieval lineage. Workers and travelers often used shoulder slings and large cloth sacks tied diagonally across the body. These allowed hands-free movement during long journeys or labor. Modern backpacks follow the same principle with added comfort and structure. Even sling bags and crossbody purses reflect this ancient habit. One strap across the body, weight distributed, hands-free. The habit of hiding pouches beneath layered clothing also has parallels in modern life. Travelers often use money belts or concealed pouches under jackets, mirroring medieval strategies for keeping valuables safe from loss or theft. These concealed carrying habits emerged not from fear, but from practicality. Medieval people moved constantly, and their belongings needed to stay secure. One of the most touching connections across time is the sound of carried objects. Medieval people often recognized the gentle clink of metal tools, the soft jingle of coins, or the rustle of pouches as they walked. Today, keys in a pocket or items shifting in a bag create similar familiar sounds, signals of movement, readiness, and daily rhythm. But perhaps the strongest medieval habit still alive today is the emotional comfort of having belongings nearby. People carry small items not only for utility, but for reassurance. Medieval travelers carried pouches with flint for fire, small knives for tasks, and tokens of good luck. Modern people carry phones, lip balms, trinkets, notebooks, items that make them feel prepared, connected, and grounded. This emotional attachment is universal and ancient. The habit of patting a pocket to check for keys is not unlike the medieval habit of touching a pouch for reassurance during a journey. These small gestures link us to ancestors across centuries of daily life. The reason medieval carrying habits survive so strongly in modern fashion is simple. They fulfill deep human needs. We want freedom of movement, security of belongings, and a sense of readiness. Bags, pouches, pockets, belts, and compartments answer these needs with elegant simplicity. Medieval people used them out of necessity. We use them out of convenience, but the instinct is the same. And so when you pick up your bag before leaving home, sling a crossbody pouch over your shoulder, tighten a belt with something attached, or feel the familiar weight of keys in a pocket, you are participating in a very old ritual. A medieval ritual. A human ritual. One that followed the flow of time without breaking. In the next chapter, we'll continue with the final major medieval clothing habit that still shapes modern wardrobes. The tradition of seasonal wardrobes. How people adapted clothing to the rhythms of the year, long before closets, storage boxes, or fashion calendars existed. If you think about the clothes you wear throughout the year, light fabrics in summer, warm layers in winter, transitional jackets in spring, cozy knits in autumn, it might feel like a modern habit shaped by fashion cycles and industry trends. But in truth, the idea of changing one's wardrobe with the seasons is deeply medieval. Long before closets, hangers, or organized drawers existed, medieval people developed a natural rhythm of dressing that aligned with the turning of the year, not through style trends, but through instinct, practicality, and an intimate connection to nature. Even now, centuries later, we follow many of the same patterns. We bring out coats when the air cools, switch to lighter garments when the sun grows strong, adjust our shoes depending on weather, and rotate colors and fabrics with each season. These habits feel instinctive because they evolved over generations, centuries of observing climate, storing garments carefully, adapting to the environment, and maintaining clothing in a world where every piece was valuable. To understand how deeply medieval this practice is, imagine an entire year unfolding slowly across a medieval village. Winter begins with heavy wool. People reach for thick cloaks, layered tunics, long-sleeved gowns, and woolen leggings. Clothing becomes heavier, built to trap as much warmth as possible. Even as people move indoors, there is no central heating, so garments remain substantial. Layers build upon layers, linen under wool under thicker wool, creating insulation that allows daily life to continue smoothly even in freezing air. As winter rolls on, medieval wardrobes shrink in predictability. There were no new collections, no fashion rotations. Instead, families reused the same winter garments year after year, repairing, patching, and layering them differently depending on the severity of the weather. This ritual of pulling out familiar winter pieces resembles our modern habit of bringing out stored coats, sweaters, and scarves once cold weather arrives. Even the emotional comfort of wearing something warm and familiar echoes medieval life, where garments held memories of previous winters. Then, as the first signs of spring appear, tiny green shoots, softer breezes, longer days, medieval clothing habits shift naturally. People begin removing heavy outer layers, folding thick cloaks, and returning to lighter wool garments. Linen starts to take a larger role again. Shoes become more flexible as thick winter stuffing is removed. Colors lighten, not due to fashion, but due to practicality. Lighter garments were simply more comfortable in warmer weather. Spring in the medieval world was unpredictable. One day mild, the next chilly. Clothing reflected this uncertainty, a light layer over a warm one, ready to be removed or added as needed. This pattern survives in modern wardrobes of transitional jackets, cardigans, layered outfits, and breathable fabrics designed to adapt to shifting temperatures. As summer arrives, medieval people embrace linen almost entirely. It becomes the foundation of daily wear. Light tunics, loose gowns, airy underlayers, and unlined garments allow air to circulate and keep the body cool. Even footwear becomes lighter, relying more on soft leather or thin soles. These habits mirror today's summer clothing. Breathable fabrics, loose silhouettes, soft shoes, natural materials. Medieval people also stored winter garments carefully during summer months. Wool cloaks, heavy coats, thick hoods, protecting them from moths and dampness. This seasonal storage is still alive today when we pack away coats, knits, and winter boots into boxes or spare closets. Even the emotional feeling of rediscovering winter clothes later mirrors the medieval experience of retrieving stored garments at the first chill. Autumn brings another shift. Medieval wardrobes respond to cooling temperatures with layered clothing. People begin combining lighter garments with medium-weight wool pieces, preparing for colder nights. Colors deepen naturally because garments unfaded by summer sun appear richer. Fabrics thicken once again. This instinctive transition, warmer tones, heavier layers, remains embedded in modern fashion cycles, even though the industry now amplifies it with new seasonal releases. But beyond practicality, seasonal dressing carried emotional meaning for medieval people, just as it does now. Winter clothes offered security. Summer clothes represented ease. Spring clothing carried hope. Autumn layers signaled the beginning of quiet, introspective months. This emotional rhythm persists. There is something deeply satisfying about wearing warm wool in winter, breathable linen in summer, soft knits in autumn, and layered outfits in spring. These are not merely fashion choices, but human instincts developed through centuries of responding to climate with resourceful clothing. Medieval households did not have large wardrobes. Clothing was limited, and people cared for each piece meticulously. This scarcity shaped smart, seasonal habits that survive today in subtle ways. People stored clothes carefully. Modern seasonal storage, sealing coats away, organizing closets according to time of year, follows medieval logic. Garments that weren't in use needed to be protected from pests, moisture, and wear. Families hung items near smoke to deter insects or folded garments between herbs and leaves. Today, people use cedar, mothballs, and airtight storage, but the purpose is the same. Medieval tailoring also responded to the seasons. Garments could be altered slightly, sleeves added or removed, hems adjusted, linings inserted. Today's fashion allows a similar adaptability. Removable linings in jackets, detachable hoods, convertible garments, and layered outfits echo medieval ingenuity. One particularly enduring medieval concept is the core wardrobe. Because people owned few garments, each piece needed to function in multiple seasons. A single tunic might serve as a summer garment on its own, a spring garment with a cloak, or a winter layer beneath heavier wool. The modern idea of capsule wardrobes, owning fewer, more versatile items, mirrors this medieval necessity. Even the modern preference for timeless pieces that work year after year reflects medieval thinking, when garments had to be durable and seasonally adaptable. Another medieval seasonal habit that survives today is repairing and refreshing garments between seasons. People patched wool clothes before winter, reinforced stitching, added linings, and checked fastenings. They washed and sun-dried linen garments before storing or wearing them again in spring. Today, many people bring out their winter coats and examine them for wear, or wash and fold summer clothes before putting them away. These habitual preparations connect our daily routines to medieval rhythms without us even realizing it. But the deepest connection between medieval seasonal clothing and modern wardrobes is the idea that the body needs different types of comfort throughout the year. Medieval people felt this instinctively. In summer, they wanted airiness. In winter, they wanted warmth and weight. In transitional seasons, they wanted flexibility. Modern people feel the same subtle shifts. Even in climates where temperature doesn't fluctuate widely, seasonal dressing still feels natural, as if our bodies remember a time when the environment dictated every clothing decision. The sensation of switching wardrobes, the first sweater of autumn, the first summer shirt after a long winter, the first warm coat before snow, evokes a timeless sense of renewal and preparation. Medieval people felt this too. Their clothing marked the turning of the year, creating rituals of change and continuity. Without noticing, we mirror these rituals exactly. Even fashion industries today revolve around 4 seasons, following cycles set by nature long before designers existed. This structure reflects medieval life far more than modern technology. The idea that garments belong to certain seasons, coats for winter, linen for summer, transitional pieces for spring and autumn, is a medieval philosophy modern society still relies on. Seasonal color shifts also trace their roots to medieval dyeing habits. Summer favored lighter, sun-resistant tones. Winter favored deeper, warmer shades. Today's seasonal color palettes follow the same logic. This is not simply trend-setting. It is ancient human behavior expressing itself through fabric. What stands out most about medieval seasonal wardrobes is the continuity they created. Clothing marked the passing of time. The arrival of certain garments signaled the arrival of certain seasons. People lived closely with nature, and their wardrobes reflected that relationship intimately. Modern life, though far more technologically advanced, still carries these impulses. We feel the seasons through our clothing. We anticipate them, we prepare for them, and we experience emotional shifts alongside physical ones. This continuity is comforting. It reminds us that even as the world changes rapidly, some rhythms remain steady. Our bodies still respond to warmth and cold the same way medieval bodies did. Our instincts for comfort and protection haven't changed, and our clothing habits echo centuries of human experience, quietly preserved through time. When you switch your wardrobe for a new season, reach for layers during changing weather, or rediscover garments stored away for months, you are participating in a medieval ritual of renewal. It is not a trend. It is a human instinct, gentle, enduring, and deeply connected to the earth. As we gently reach the end of this long wander through medieval clothing habits, something becomes wonderfully clear. Even though centuries have passed and the world has changed beyond recognition, the way we dress, the small rituals, the quiet comforts, the practical choices, still follows the same soft rhythms medieval people once lived by. Every time you pull on a warm coat in winter, lace up your shoes before leaving home, tie a hood tight against the wind, or choose a color that feels calm and familiar, you are echoing a gesture someone made hundreds of years ago in a quiet village, on a cool morning, under soft light. The fabrics we trust, the layers we choose, the bags we carry, the fastenings we use, the colors we return to, and the seasonal rhythms we follow, none of these habits are accidental. They were shaped slowly, patiently, across generations who learned how to live comfortably with the world around them. And what is most beautiful is how natural these habits feel. We don't have to think about them. They simply happen, just as they did for medieval families who woke each morning, dressed for the day, and stepped into routine with the same instinct for warmth, protection, movement, and harmony. Clothing, in the end, is more than fabric. It is a memory passed from hand to hand, era to era, a quiet inheritance, a soft thread connecting us to people who lived long before us, people who worried about cold winters, welcomed the return of spring, patched their clothes with care, trusted the weight of wool, and found comfort in simple, practical garments. Thank you for joining this peaceful journey tonight, for drifting with me through time, fabric, color, and memory. If this calm exploration helped you relax or taught you something new, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment sharing what part of medieval clothing surprised you the most. Your support keeps these gentle bedtime histories alive. Sleep well, and until the next story, good night.